Microphone check 1 2, check 1 2, check 1 2.
Zach, can you hear me?
All right, loud and clear.
Hear the music?
Yeah, that's a very dark and demented music.
Okay, like a classical.
Yeah. Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall be beginning in about 5 more minutes. To the students taking ELC 600, please remind your friends to be present for this session. Thank you. And Let's begin, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good afternoon, a very spectacular Friday. I bid to all of you joining us for this webinar entitled Of Language, Literature, and Law. Today we have a special guest with us, none other than Mr. Azlan Abdul Razak. So, ladies and gentlemen, our special guest, Mr. Azlan, fellow lecturers, and not forgetting fellow students, especially ELC600 students that are currently watching this. So pay close attention. If you have any questions, we will, inshallah, have a Q&A session. By the end of this session, feel free to post your questions in the chat box, and we will entertain those questions soon. Okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, our guest for today, Mr. Azlan. Who is Mr. Azlan Razak? So, all right, known online. Okay, I assume some of you probably follow him on his social media accounts. So, Mr. Azlan Abdul Razak, was called to the Malaysian bar in 2014 and has been an ever-present in the legal sphere since. He completed his pupillage with Messrs. Zain and Co. before embarking his journey as legal associate at Messrs. Sean Delamore and Co., and subsequently gave birth to his own firm, Messrs. Azlan Razak and Associates. Possessing vast experience in conducting exemplary advisory work and representation in civil and criminal litigation matters, Azlan carries with him the expertise of developing creative case strategies and writing persuasive briefs. Apart from his legal professional career, Azlan passionate about reading books, particularly on English literature, and hoping to be a future thought leader in the area of language and literature. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's begin this webinar session moderated by none other than Academy Pengajian Bahasa's own Nur Aziati Mat Saat. Puan Nur Aziati, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. MC, Mr. Zakaria. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome once again our invited speaker, Mr. Azlan Abdul Razak, ELC 600 students from UiTM Law Faculty, and all other participants who are watching us live via Academy Pengajian Bahasa YouTube channel. So, before I proceed with the session with more serious questions, I would like to ask a very important question to Mr. Azlan, okay? And I am very sure our participants will also like to know this. Okay, Mr. Azlan, how are you?
I'm very good, quite hungry, but good otherwise, yes. I hope everyone's well as well.
You haven't had your lunch?
Well, I had just a thin bowl of food earlier this morning, but yeah.
All right, Alhamdulillah, glad to know that you're fine, you're in good condition, because you know why? We have a lot of questions to ask you, and we hope that you can enlighten us in this very session today, inshallah, yeah? Okay,
Sure,
now.
I'll try my best, yeah.
All right, now, Mr. Azlan, you are currently pursuing a bachelor degree in English language, yeah?
English language and literature. So it's a mix of both language and literature.
Ah, that's interesting. Awesome. Okay. Can you share what motivated you to pursue the course?
Well, actually, the whole thing started, well, I've always had passion for language. I am always known as someone who would carry his dictionary everywhere he moves about. And my passion in the language, for the language lies in I think my observation on things around me. And while many people may observe the world through various other lenses, but I am rather drawn to the world through my observation from the lens of language. And I think language alone isn't enough. So language is a medium, but of course it doesn't work in vacuum. There are things that make it move, and it's through stories, it's through the happenings around the world. And I cannot find any other things that would help me understand language better than the literary methods of learning, and that's through English literature. That was when I thought, okay, I want to do this seriously. It became very intense during the first lockdown. We had nothing to do. I tried cooking, but failed miserably all the time. And I thought, okay, there are things that one can do. There are just things that one can always try to do, but fail nonetheless. And that's me in my cooking. So of course, cooking became a frustration. Then I thought, okay, what is there to do to salvage this frustration of mine? Then I went to books, and I joined this online course organized by Harvard University. So it was a 3-week course, and that course was about Hamlet, Shakespeare. So not only did we just read Shakespeare's Hamlet, we dissected further. We discussed the many lenses through which Hamlet was authored by Shakespeare. That was when I came to realize that there were other things in Hamlet apart from just the story, and that was religion, culture, issues on politics and such like. And then because we couldn't work at the time, we couldn't move about. I was all cooped up at home. I became very domestically tamed rather, and I couldn't do anything but just read. And of course, my failed attempts at cooking. And when everything just went back to normal, when we all began to be able to work as per things prior to the lockdown, I thought, okay, I really enjoyed reading. I really enjoyed dissecting. I really enjoyed engaging with the text, with the participants in the cause of that online cause. And I thought, maybe I should do this seriously. And after all, I've always wanted to do a language-related course or study. And Puan Aziati, I think many do not know, I was once a student of APB. Right after my Asasi Foundation, I joined APB. I think I did just a semester. I enrolled for the bachelor degree in, I think, English for Professional Communication. Yeah, so that just happened for just one semester, after which I received an offer to read law at UUM together with a scholarship. So not that I really hated the course that I had to move, but at the time I was financially rather constrained. That financial help by way of scholarship to read law was very enticing, was too enticing an offer that I couldn't let go of. And now it's more of me picking up where I before left off. So I did language. I really, really fell in love with it. I am very much in love with it still now. And having then finished law school and having been now in practice, I thought, okay, maybe it's time to, just pick up where I left off many, many years ago. Yeah.
Interesting. Just the way you tell us what motivated you to pursue language course actually reflect your passion, in language. All right. So as a language learner who also is currently practicing law, how does that make you feel?
I think I've never felt more complete, I would say. I received a lot. I've been receiving, in fact, I still do receive a lot of messages online on Instagram asking me how, one would be able to batter up his or her command of the language. I've always had this keen interest in trying to help those who want to help themselves. But as a lawyer, if I were to speak about language in my capacity as a lawyer, I hold a rather extreme view. It is my personal opinion that as a lawyer, the proficiency in language is a must. It's a tool of profession. It is a responsibility. At this juncture where I'm at now, I don't regard language as just a mere passion of mine. It is my responsibility, because I always tell my interns or anyone, as a lawyer, or any Tom, Dick, and Harry can speak English. They can, but they cannot speak English in court, not because they are not able to speak, or not because they are crippled with this proficiency skills. It's just that they are not authorized to speak. So for someone who is a lawyer who's authorized to speak, yet he doesn't speak effectively, it doesn't speak in a way that is required of him as a lawyer, in a manner that is professional enough, then I do not think that there is any bigger sin that a lawyer can commit than to not be able to argue the case using the language or using the standard of the language that is expected of him as a professional practitioner. So sorry, back to the question you've asked, ma'am. How are these two, or how does this make me feel? I feel it is an obligation. It is an obligation. I've never felt more complete as a lawyer. I've never felt more satisfied in that I am able to exercise the knowledge of the law that I have at the back of my mind through the tool of language, to ensure that it gets delivered effectively to the minds of the judges sitting at the bench, thanks to the help of the language and the skills that I've since gathered in the course of my study in this course. Yeah.
To be honest, we actually didn't know that you were once a PB student.
Well, yeah, I really enjoyed my time. I had the greatest of time. Yeah, I've had the privilege of being under the finest tutelage of many lecturers of mine, such as Dr. Norazini Abdullah. I'm not certain. Yeah, the good lady is still around. Dr. Fatima Dina, Dr. Chai. Yeah, whom I still continue to communicate with until now. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Okay.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, how important is English for our future lawyers? Because as you are aware, we are talking to, inshallah, future lawyers, the students from Faculty of Law, UITM. So how important is English for future lawyers?
I think when we talk about English, I would expand that I would expand the parameter to the extent that it is the language alone is very important. And if we were to narrow it down to English, it is a common knowledge that, you know, English is a language of not just communication in court, apart from Bahasa Melayu, but English is also the source of understanding the authorities, the cases, the previous cases decided by the previous courts. And as much as many people say that, oh, dalam court orang cakap Bahasa Melayu, it is true. And there are, of course, many textbooks or many, we've got such a wealth of literature, legal literature offered in Malay, but reality is such that there are many other legal literature likewise from other parts of the world that is authored in English, and that helps us, or me rather, expand our knowledge further, that broadens the horizon of the knowledge through the help of all these materials authored, explained, and argued in English. It is common knowledge, and I think everyone knows this. And I hold a firm belief that insofar as the English is concerned, it is of paramount importance that we put it in such a very high pedestal. Not that I'm saying that we should disregard other languages, but if you were to talk about the importance of English in the context of legal profession, the vital importance of it is huge, that one cannot simply afford to deny. Yeah.
You mentioned that English is very important also in court, but there's the statement, kalau jadi lawyer dekat Malaysia, akan guna bahasa Melayu, just like what you mentioned earlier, tak perlu guna sangat English. So what is your thoughts on this?
Well, I think it is, as much as I want to give the speaker the benefit of the doubt for saying that, I think an extreme me would argue that it is simply a very selfish or ignorant remark. Even if English is not used in court, but if we view language as a form of knowledge, then who are we to disregard the importance of knowledge in the first place? But speaking of English in the context of communication in court, that is absolutely not true at all. As much as Bahasa Melayu is a language, is used or is known for its use as a language of the court, but lawyers may choose to speak in English, or judges may insist on arguments being made in English, or judges or the court may insist on written arguments or written submissions to be presented, argued, and addressed in English. It is quite selfish, or it is rather irresponsible to say that just because we think that Bahasa Melayu is used widely in court, then we disregard wholly the importance of English in court. After all, language, be it Malay, be it English, is a form of knowledge that is always good to be learned, knowledge of which is always good to be obtained as well. Yeah. So to future lawyers here, to future lawyers present in this talk, I would urge that should that remark be made to you, do not either feel discouraged, nor would I advise you to feel that you are spared the hassle of continuing to learn the language, even if it's not widely used in court, or even if it's not used in the court, in a particular court that a particular lawyer goes to on a regular basis. It does not mean that one can disregard it. I've never been to any courts in Malaysia that I am told that I am not allowed to use English. I've been to many courts as remote as Segamat or Pontian or Kuala Perlis, not Kuala Perlis, Kanga or Kelantan for that matter, where I am welcome to argue my arguments, where I am encouraged to express my thoughts in English. You are to speak in a language that you are comfortable arguing or expressing your thoughts on. It does not mean that you are barred from speaking or from arguing or from advancing the argument in English. If it's English that you're most comfortable with when it comes to argument before the bench, by all means, I don't anything that should hamper you from that.
Yeah, excuse me for my ignorance. So in Malaysia court, lawyers are allowed to use English as well, yeah?
Yes, that is absolutely true. Yeah.
And you have been using English instead of Bahasa Melayu in most cases?
It depends on the situation, really. If I go to court, if the agenda, the court session, in particular, is to ask witnesses, where I am to examine witnesses on stand where they do not understand English, then of course I would ask them questions. I would examine them from the witness box in Bahasa Melayu. But if it's a matter of arguing on any point of law against my opponent before the bench, it really is a matter of the language that I'm most comfortable arguing. And it's in most cases, I would choose to speak or to argue in English. You can, the permission can always be sought, and most of the time such request is granted.
Interesting fact. Now that I know, because before this we always thought that, oh, okay, in Malaysia, in Malaysia court, the lawyers or the judge will always articulate in Bahasa.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Thank you so much. All right. Okay.
All I'm saying is, ma'am, a leeway is there. You are at liberty to choose to argue in a language that you're most comfortable arguing in. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting fact.
It is, yeah.
All right. So as our MC earlier mentioned, you are very passionate about reading books. Yeah.
In fact, when I told you, ma'am, I hadn't had my lunch yet. That was because I was actually finishing the last chapter of the book that I promised I would finish this week, and that is Charlotte Bronte, Shirley. So I promised myself that I would not eat until I finished the very last page of the last chapter, which I have like a few minutes ago before this started. So I'll have that later on.
All right, and you are also hoping to be future taught in the area of language and literature. So how is literature actually related to law? Just now we talk about how important English is, but how is literature related to law?
It is related in many aspects, actually, because we must understand one thing: law is not justice. Law, in my opinion, is a mechanism through which justice can be achieved. So in the name of justice, the law can operate. So that's why we say justice is not obtained, or justice prevail, because the written laws itself, the written or the existing laws themselves are bad. So just because we have law does not mean that justice can be obtained. Yeah, justice can only prevail if we have good laws or good sets of law. So coming back to literature, when I read literary materials or just books of literature, I'm personally very interested in Victorian literature. So there are many lenses through which we can see justice. From the Victorian perspective, for example, issues on gender discrimination, class discrimination, or the unfair distribution of wealth that leads to a condition that a person lives in. And that, to me, as a lawyer, is very interesting to note, because, for example, we see, if you read Charles Dickens' Hard Times, we see that, because of the heavy industrialization of the day at the time, people were living in poverty. People couldn't even feed themselves, and people were beginning to blame the system of the governance. But let's look at how it is today, we see that we have laws that we perceive to be fair, or we have the sets of law that we perceive to be unfair, and we try to justify that using various situations that we see online. For example, how a person is, how is it that a person can get very easy acquittal despite overwhelming facts that could not work to his advantage. So this sort of reminds me, as a reader of literature and as a person who's in the practice of law, of the fact that law alone is not enough to ensure justice. This has been a prevalent phenomenon right from the lifetime of Queen Victoria until the very second that we are now breathing in. So the pattern is almost very consistent. And if you ask me, how is that relevant? It is relevant in the sense that it makes us think. It makes us sit down in stillness and begin to think what has gone wrong, or what is it that we've improved that time to the present time that we live today, and how is it possible that these things still prevail despite our differences in cultures, religions. Because when we read Victorian literatures, of course, literature, the England back in 1800, and we see in Malaysia 2022 today, Malaysia, far away from England, far away from the time that all the stories were told and authored, yet the conditions are still the same. So it makes us think. So it really empowers the skills of reflection. It really broadens our mind. It makes us question more, and we do not stop questioning it. So that's how relevant it is that literature must not be separated or be driven away from the law. Yeah.
So, hold on. Okay, but there are some law students believe that it is not necessary actually to learn literature. What is your opinion on this?
Oh, well, I understand. First of all, I instead of just saying you're wrong, or there is actually not a very clever argument because I've got a clever argument against it, I would first empathize with them. I understand. I do not just wake up one morning and decide that I want to read the likes of Shakespeare or Thomas Hardy or Charlotte Bronte. It took a massive amount of courage for me to eventually decide I want to not read, but try reading them and their books. And there were many instances where I simply just collapsed and almost gave up, but I chose not to. So I empathize. I truly understand the plight that these students face when, they are faced with this burden of having to read this piece of literature simply because, well, otherwise you wouldn't get marks if you don't answer the questions correctly, or if you do not read it, then you might have your evaluation compromised. And because of these frustrations, then these questions arise. Why do I have to read this? To be honest with you, I am a person who loves to read for the sake of not just the context or the insights, but of the language itself. I'm a passionate learner of language. So when I read literature, when I read any pieces of literature, what entices me, what turns me on emotionally and intellectually is the way the stories are told, the forces that are forced through the story by the author. And when I feel that satisfaction of having read something that is very, very complicated, then I would tell myself that I can face all these complications that I will face when I appear before the bench to face the actually scary figures that we call judges or opponents. I know this is not a very strong argument to employ if one is to overcome the hatred for literature.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to ask you that. What
Yeah,
if,
yeah,
you
of
know,
course.
what if there's like students who basically just have no patience in English and find literatures also like, you know, difficult for them to digest and, you know, to appreciate. So
Well,
yeah.
in practice, in the practice of law, I mean, I am a very I'm very happy that I end up in legal practice, but as a lawyer, you do not just get cases that you like to do. You do not just get cases that you only choose to do. I mean, despite the fact that I may have the liberty of choosing the cases that I do, but there are many aspects of the law or the technical points of law, the positions of the law that are very complicated, and I still have to do that nonetheless. So I guess it's not about not wanting to read literature yet having to do that. It's about engaging in something that you do not like because you think it is way above your ability, but you brave through that nonetheless, because that's the same exact thing that you will face when you practice law. I may profess to be a lawyer. I may be proud of the fact that I am in the practice of law, which is something that I've always wanted to be. But the law is very vast in its range of areas. And there are many areas of law that I do not quite like. But do I want to not do that simply because I do not want to, simply because it does not interest me? What kind of a lawyer does that make me? So I always ask myself that question. So if you think that reading literature, or reading for that matter, is something that you do not like doing and you stop doing it because of that dislike, then we might want to take a few minutes of our time and reflect on what kind, the person that we want to be. Do we simply give up because we do not like it? Or do we try that nonetheless, despite the difficulties that may arise in the cause of our dealing in the case as a lawyer, for example? So maybe you can start having this training, this mental training through literature. You may not like it, Shakespeare may not quite interest you, but in life, we have to break through things that are complicated. So let's do that.
It's a strong argument, and also interesting the fact that you say you brave through what you fear of. Yeah, it's just that we cannot choose what we like. We just have to do if we have to. Right, there are questions from our students here. Yeah, Mr. Azlan.
Yeah.
Let me read the question. Mr. Azlan, do you think literature can become a tool in terms of law used by any power to incite certain ideologies? If so, do you view it as ethical?
Oh, well, ideologies, of course, law is, as a practitioner of law, I view ideologies as something that is wholly foreign from what we ought to do as lawyers. That would be the work of the other lawmakers. So, speaking of ethics, it's going to require just another long talking about ethics. But your curiosity in respect to the question you've asked, I would think as a lawyer, if literature is used
I think Mr. Azlan is having some sort of internet connection.
Yeah, technology prevails law that everyone is obliged to practice. Oh, I can hear you well, ma'am. Am I now heard very clearly? Hello, ma'am. Can you hear
You
me?
were lagging just now.
Okay. What about now?
Okay, you're
Am I
back.
good?
You're back.
Okay, I'm back. Yeah, yeah. I think. Sorry, I'll just repeat the whole answer that I've just said. Well, as a lawyer, our work is to practice law. Yeah, to practice as in we have to apply the law to the situation that our clients are embattled with in court. But if you think that literature is used to spread certain ideologies that are not consistent with our set of belief, yet these ideologies eventually take form in the form of written laws, and that they must be practiced and applied and respected despite us not liking it, that therein lies the very nature, or therein lies the very responsibility of lawyers, that we must speak out against it, that we must be brave enough to say that this is wrong and this is not ethical if you think it is not ethical. There are many books of literature that I've read that I just don't like, or I simply hate, because of the ideologies, because of the values that eventually take form in the shape of law, the real law that we have today. For example, if you read Bronte, there are many scenes, or there are many incidents in the story. For example, Wuthering Heights, Emily Bronte, where women cannot do this, women cannot do that, and we find it very hard to understand and appreciate. Yet that was the actual reality of England at that time. And yes, it has changed. Just imagine if I were to read that novel in the very same year that that novel was written and published, and as a lawyer who then had to practice the law of the day, i.e. the Victorian law at the time, of course, I may have my disrespect for it, but as a lawyer, I am somehow forced to practice and to apply the law. So on one hand, I don't like it. On the other hand, I must practice it. And I view that unethical. Therein lies the responsibility as a lawyer to speak out against it. It's a question of courage. The question that is left to be asked and answered is, having read this, and having understanding that despite this being a fiction, a work of fiction, yet it really reflects the reality of the time, and yet that is reflective of the law that is practiced today, imagine, then what do I do next? Is a question of courage. Should I muster up the courage to speak out against it? Should I breathe through it by way of telling people this is my firm belief and this is what I will do to ensure that the law will change because I believe it is not ethical? So it's a question of courage. So therein lies the responsibility of a lawyer. When I say lawyer, I would extend that to all of you here. I mean, of course, you're now still reading law, but you will become lawyers one day. And when I say lawyers, I mean all of you here. So therein lies your personal, your individual responsibility to read a work of fiction and not agreeing with it. Then you must then step up, stand up, and argue against it using the very power of objectivity that you've all been taught all this while in law school. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Muhammad Alif Ikhwan. So basically, lawyers do carry huge responsibility, Mr. Azlan, when we talk about ideologies. Yeah, whether you like it or not, you basically have two ends here. Yeah, one end maybe the reality or the ideology that go against, but at the other end, you as a lawyer, you by hook or by crook, you have to follow the rules or whatnot, right?
And this is reflective of the realities,
Yeah.
or not realities, or the instances, the fictitious instances that I find in many pieces of literature that I've read. There are many things that I do not like about it, but what I do, I mean, since it's just a work of fiction, but the values within it are something that I don't understand its relevance, then I write about it. I speak out against it to ensure that what may have happened in the past, written or exemplified in the form of a book, does not happen again today. So I think, and I get to do that because I feel I understand the privilege of being able to do that in my capacity as a lawyer. I remember, speaking of literature, if I may add, Ms. Aziati, I once argued before the bench of the High Court in Muar, and I kept on arguing, and the judge, realizing that I seemed to not want to stop, then asked me, counsel, you always want to argue. Are you not tired? Of course, he said that in jest, somewhere along the line, because I was already nearing the end of my argument. So I may have covered all the topics. So he just wanted to say that for the sake of it, because everyone is tired. So someone had to laugh, and someone had to crack a joke. And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize, my lord. I'm pretty much in the spirit of Charles Dickens when he said in the book, I'm sorry, sir, can I please have more?" So that is the line, a very famous line of Dickens' novel. I think, yeah. And then he just said, okay, so that's Dickens. But then Dickens said this, and that. And then yet you're arguing this from this point of view of A, B, C, and D. And then what could have been just a simple thank you and me sitting down, then ended up in me and the judge exchanging remarks about Charles Dickens and the critiques of the novel that quite lasted a while, I think. So that was very refreshing to have literature within the argument of law in an actual courtroom.
Interesting experience you have. Okay, so another question, Mr. Azlan. The question is, do you think by learning literature, it can help us future lawyers, the students, to understand all English cases as well?
Yes, I would say that personally, it has helped me tremendously in my understanding of the law, in my writing skills when I'm required to write written submissions to court. Like I said, laws, we do not wake up and simply have laws made on the very same day. When we talk about law or civil law, for example, they may date as far back as the time of Queen Victoria, or even those before her. And of course, when we make reference to legal precedents, we make reference to the relevant and the current one, but we cannot disregard the laws that were made many, many years ago, or 100 years ago, just to understand the context and the notion of that very making of the law. So when that when I have to read these laws, and of course the contextualization of the facts or of the law may not be something that I can quite relate because of the differences in terms of jurisdictions, time, geography. Somehow, through reading various works of literature from other countries, it helps, or it somehow provides me a smoother path to understand the process of contextualization. when I simply wake up one morning and decide that I want to read a work of literature that was written in 1800, for example. Of course, this is 2022, and I am Malaysian, I'm not English. I may not understand the traditions of the time, let alone the place, but I still pick up the book anyway and read. And despite the ancient use of certain words and expressions, I still make efforts to understand them. Yeah. So that's the same exact process that I go through when I read legal or court's decisions held in the time of the ancient common law period. For example, if I want to study or if I want to understand the origin of the thought of defamation, for example, or the thought of battery or assault. If anyone here has done this course on the law of tort, you would agree with me that there are many cases, or there are many references made in, there are many references made to cases that were decided many years ago. When I say many years ago, I mean hundreds of years ago. And of course, to understand it will require a lot of time, but it does not mean that it is not possible. It is. So through reading many works of literature, I somehow managed to formulate my own way of understanding or approaching the text. So the way I approach this ancient text of literature is the same one that I apply to my process of approaching ancient text of law. So that works very well for me, and I'm grateful that I do not just give up reading something that I think is no longer relevant, because you wouldn't know when that will be of use. And it has always been of use to me as a reader of literature, and most importantly, as a practitioner of law.
Yeah, even though the literary texts or law texts that has been written many years, like mentioned, many years, like 100 years over.
Yeah.
Sometimes we may find the moral values or lesson learned, okay, from those are still relevant up until today's context. Yeah.
Yeah, it is true. Yeah, I mean, speaking of relevance, it makes us wonder. I mean, at least it does make me sit still and reflect on one very pertinent question: how is it the things that were portrayed in that book authored in 1915, for example, are pretty much a reflection of actual reality today in 2022 Malaysia? So,
current context.
Yeah, how is it that such event or such phenomenon still prevails and does not cease to exist, despite these vast differences in terms of time and demographics?
All right. Okay. So we do have other questions to Mr. Azlan. Yeah. I shall pass this to our MC, Zakaria. Do you want to go ahead and throw the questions? Okay.
Hi, Zach.
All right. Hello, Alan. How are things?
Good.
We still need to hang out. I know that's still anyway. All right, Alan, thank you so much for joining us for today. Okay, I myself have a few questions. Okay, I mean, I've been teaching this course, ELC600, and my audience have, I think, ever since I taught this was in 2018, I guess, have always been law students. So I've been teaching generations to a certain extent. So, okay, so my question here is, let's say for me as the lecturer for this program, for this course, sorry, if we were to, and memang this course is law students take it, okay, it's as if it's like a law exclusive course, so yeah, despite being offered by Academy Pengajian Bahasa. So my question here is, if let's say hypothetically, we were to make some improvements to this course, like maybe the kind of text to be used for future students and so on. what would you recommend?
Well, first of all, ma'am and sir, I am no expert in terms of the methods of education. I would be the last person to offer my advice. But if I may perhaps suggest, and of course this is subject to whole rejection, which I'm fine with. If I may suggest humbly, in terms of materials or in terms of things that might want to be thought over for the benefits of law students studying this course, this literature-based course, I would suggest that perhaps reading text that are required for students to read would be those with values that would be very useful for their future practice as lawyers. So I think Ms. Aziati mentioned this book, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird. I read that book last year, actually. And if I were to read as just a lay person, I would find the book very interesting, exciting, and very, humbling to appreciate, because there are just many things that we can learn from it. But if I were to look at it from the lens of a lawyer, there are many things that I equally find interesting, except that those points of interest are predicated or are situated within the perimeter of law. So there are many instances, for example, the instances where Atticus was cross-examining the father of the accuser. There are instances where the sheriff decided that the father, sorry, the name escapes me, but the father shouldn't be pronounced dead on the ground or on the account of murder, but rather accident. This actually this requires a whole lot of different sessions or talks in respect of the questions on law and morality, the philosophical values on the state of guilt and innocence, or the presumption that one shouldn't take when one decides who's right and who's wrong. So these are all legal questions, despite it, having or bearing on some aspects of philosophies, but still legal nonetheless. So that would be interesting. If I were to sit through the lecture, when one discusses, or when you discuss To Kill the Mockingbird, I would very interested in dissecting it through the lens of law, because that just has a lot of things to discuss, and likewise, students somehow would be enticed to engage in the discussion of that sort as well, because these are the things that you will have to deal with when you enter into the actual legal profession. Because trust me, ladies and gentlemen, as much as you, well, of course, I don't presume that you do, but if you do not feel the interest in reading To Kill a Mockingbird, at least, do not feel that, because most scenes in the novel are real scenes in the real court, and you do face that. Except that we no longer have jury in our Malaysian court.
Mr. Azlan? Okay, I think. Okay, he's.
Never mind. I suppose he's having some internet difficulties from his end.
Side of the court where when there are
Oh,
and yeah.
Mr. Azlan, are you there? Sorry, you went silent just now. We didn't hear you.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no problem, no problem.
No problem, because probably the internet connection issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you
It happens when I have to do this online.
it is always that case, yeah. Are you back? Is it possible?
Yeah, but am I now heard very clearly though?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I am. I can
Alright,
see
okay.
and hear you.
Yeah, okay. Could you just briefly recap a bit what we missed just now?
Oh Lord. Zach, can you hear me, Zach?
Yes, we can hear you clearly
Yeah.
when you said that, but right now you're moving.
Okay,
And
now
audible.
Now you're
I'm
moving.
normal.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see me flipping my hair, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Very clearly. Great.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
All right. So you were
yeah.
talking about your insights. I mean, what would be your insights on To Kill a Mockingbird just now you mentioned?
Oh yeah.
We discussed injustice in the legal system.
Yeah, that is in response to Zachariah's question on what can perhaps be done. And my answer to that was to have as many literary texts as possible that have a lot of potential discussions on the law, if law students are to be, encouraged to be interested in this field of literature. Because To Kill a Mockingbird, for example, there are just many things in it. There are many scenes in the book that are actually real scenes that one will witness when one practices law. The scene on taunting, because Atticus took up a matter that involved a black man. And of course, we do not have black men here in Malaysia, but it's a different context. It's a racial discrimination that is very prevalent. And I personally have had, the sort of tauntings because I represent a set of or a group of people that many others do not quite find normative. Yeah. So that happens. I received the taunting. I've had the instance where I received personal threats because of certain arguments that I make or personal legal stand that I make. So that's very relevant. That's just so humbling to see that similarity of between the scene, despite that being just a set of fiction, and the real scene that I have that draw on, or that just bear a lot of similarities. So coming back to the question, perhaps apart from To Kill a Mockingbird, we have a lot of other works of literature that one may talk about from the lens of the law. We have Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare, The Pound of Flesh. So that to me is the very thing that we can argue from the point of legal interpretation. When, he said the pound of flesh, does it actually mean the pound of flesh? So in legal setting or in legal study, we have this literal interpretation of the law or the purposive interpretation of the law. So in fact, when I argued, I've had one occasion when I had to argue the point on the type of interpretation that I would want to approach. I used that exact example from Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice, and that is just quite, to me, it was a very refreshing experience that I may include that I may incorporate the instances from literary works into my actual legal argument.
I see. All right. Thank you so much for your insight, Azlan. That was very helpful. Okay, I'll pass the floor back to you, Puan Aziati.
Thank you, Zach. All right, Mr. Azlan, we have a number of questions from our students.
Oh,
I believe this is an interesting
Puan,
session for them, yeah?
Puan, if I may suggest,
Yes.
I'm just suggesting, these students of yours present today, I would say, are future lawyers. So
Yes.
as lawyers, when
Yes.
we are not happy with something that we need to ask, we ask orally.
Openly.
We don't just type out. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
okay.
encourage students with questions to step up and ask questions, you know,
Yes.
straight away without having to type those questions. Do not hide beneath the keyboard. We lawyers, we stand up and talk, for goodness sake.
All right, thank you. Okay, you're right, indeed. Okay, so I might want to suggest Melly, Alisha, Nurin, Nabila, Nabil, Imran, and a few others. Okay, there are a few questions here.
Yeah.
For you to just turn on your mic, and if possible, turn on your camera as well.
Do both. I mean, come on, be brave, people. Be brave.
And
it's just me.
Ask whatever questions you have for Mr. Azlan. This is, I would say, not an easy platform. Yeah, this is like a huge opportunity, yeah, for you guys, future lawyers, to have Mr. Azlan with us today. So use this opportunity, guys. Go ahead.
Come on, you will face judges.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Shafika,
Waalaikumsalam.
but I accidentally logged in using my friend's account. Okay.
Understood.
I have a question to it, Mr. Azlan. Okay.
Yes,
in your opinion, what is your opinion if we studied in degree in law but decided instead of practicing as a lawyer, but we choose to be a language or literature lecturer in the future? What would you say the pathway will be?
I think it really is a question of interest. It really is a question of choice, or the chosen path that you would wish to tread on. Of course, I'm not certain how the formal requirements of the university requirements are like that you want to change, or you know, you want to teach language by virtue of your qualification in law. That is something that you might want to inquire the universities about. But I understand the theme of your question is how, or is it at all possible that, you know, having read law, we choose other path, or we choose to do other things? I think that would be the general theme or concern from your question, right, ma'am? And if that is so, the world is yours to explore. Do that. I've had many friends who, you know, upon completion of their legal studies, decided to venture out into other things, and he's just as happy as I am, and he's not feeling as though he's missing out on things that I am now experiencing as lawyers. So it is absolutely doable. It is absolutely fine to choose to walk on a path that others less walk on. And after all, it's your path. So be comfortable in it. It's your foot that you use to walk on those paths of your choice. So despair not.
Thank you, Mr. Azlan.
You're welcome, my dear. Any questions?
So yeah, basically, the world is your students. If you feel that you do not want to practice law and your interest is in language, and go ahead and proceed, right, Mr. Azlan?
True.
Yeah, okay. Other questions, students? Since you have posted here quite a number of questions, why not, instead of just posting it here in our chat box?
Hello.
Yes.
My name is Amin Harit. I want to ask a question to Mr. Azlan, since I have had an interest in literary works as of late, and I just wanted to know,
that's good.
In the context, in the perspective of a law student, what would be the most beneficial starting point for me? Either in my interest as a law student, or maybe what would be more helpful to me in my future endeavors?
I think, if I understand it correctly, what would be the best starting point, or what would be the best way to approach
Yes, what would be the best approach to literary works?
Literary works. I would say, should you want to approach any literary works, you do not have to confine yourself within those works that may only be of your personal interest, because you want to actually do absolute justice to the work of literature, right? For example, if you really have that keen interest in law, as much as I would encourage reading a lot of works of literature that are law themed, for example, but do not just confine yourself to that. And do not just confine yourself to just English literature, because we have such a wealth of materials or literatures around the world. The greatest author ever that everyone agrees that he is Leo Tolstoy, the author of Anna Karenina, and he's not even English. He wrote first in Russian, that was then translated into English and many other languages. And I've had the privilege of reading the book, and it's nothing about law. It's nothing about things that I see every day, discriminations or class differences. It's about the politics of the country at the time, which then bring us to, or the readers to, the topics on discrimination or women infidelity at the time. Because and I found it very interesting to read, because I did not confine myself to just reading materials that are of interest. I would challenge myself. So I've read the Epic of Gilgamesh. I think something that was written 4,000 years ago. Even the author of the work is not known until now. And that has got nothing to do with the theme of law or justice or politics, something that I am very profoundly keen on. Yet I read it nonetheless, because I would not have found out, or I would not have discovered the range of themes in that book that I would otherwise have not discovered had I just confined myself within the theme of my interest. So instead of deciding first on your interest and then choose the works that have bearing on the interest, you just choose the work, read it, and openly dissect it, and then you'll be able to see the wealth of themes that the book or the author seeks to portray through his or her work. I hope that answers your question, Ame.
Yes, thank you very much.
Much obliged.
Any other questions from the students?
Sorry, I have a question.
I see that there are several questions here. Come on.
Yeah, but they are afraid to actually face you, perhaps.
Yeah, don't be scared. We're not arguing here. We're just sharing. You can just
sharing.
turn on.
This is a sharing session.
Yeah, you can just turn on the mic and say, Alan, I do not agree with you, and here are my thoughts. Do that. That's what we do. Yeah, that is something that you shall be paid to do.
Students, come on, law students.
Hi, Mr. Azlan.
Hi.
I have a question. Actually, I represent someone, but he cannot join the Zoom meeting as it limited to 100 participants only. So the question is, as far as I'm concerned, you really appreciate the literature. So to what extent does the literature help you in handling your cases and winning the case in your practice of civil litigation? Thank you.
You're welcome. Two things that I think literature or reading literature has helped me tremendously. First, the act of reading alone. the very act of reading alone. I have this book actually. Okay, so this is Shirley. Yeah, it runs up until 700 pages. Yeah, and a very boring book about typical Victorian woman who just does not stop whining about men that she loves but does not love her back. If it's just a story of 10 pages, maybe I'll be able to relate. But you know, I don't want to read about your love story that spans about 700 pages. But there are many other things, of course, discussed in this book, in this book by Charlotte Bronte. So when I say the very act of reading alone, this rhythm that overcomes me as I go through the story page by page, I somehow am very determined to finish it down to the last page, because I do not simply want to forsake it. I simply do not want to ignore it, or simply I do not want to give up reading it. Yeah, I made a vow to myself that I would finish it down to the last page. So how is that relevant to the question that you've asked? Is a question of courage, is a question of not giving up. Yeah, so that very act of reading alone, it's a slog of a read. But if you can slog through the whole book, despite many temptations to stop, yet you do not stop, and you make it eventually till the end, that is something of a good prediction of how you will manage your case, your client, the mountainous amount of documents that you have to read and draft and reread and redraft and not stop drafting till the end. So it is a slog of a work. So the novel can be a slog of a read to deal with, but that is the same exact thing that will happen in real world. And like I said, I've had many cases where the points of law are very complicated, are just so challenging, are just so troublesome and difficult, to say the least, to handle. But having the spirit of not wanting to give up, which I've gleaned, which I've obtained through the attitudes that I've tried so hard to adopt in my reading process, it helps a lot. So it helps me not simply give up, it helps me form that attitude against very easy submission to the temptation of giving up. So that's the act of reading alone. But the substance of a reading is another thing. Yeah, it's another matter altogether that is worth discussing. So how does that help me, apart from the act of reading, is the things that I read. So like I said, I am a very keen reader of Victorian literature, and the way the language is worded, the way the language is shaped, the way certain expressions are portrayed, are pretty much a challenge for me to understand. And that is still the very same difficulty that I face when I read cases, for example, because of the complexity of the matter, because of the writing style of certain judges that I do not simply, comprehend very easily. So that poses a challenge for me. So there are many times when I read cases, written for previous decisions where I also, decide to give up, but I do not. Why? Because the question, why is it that I give up, is being written here in this decision? And that's the same exact thing that I face when I read Victorian literature. The choice of word, choice of expression, the choice of perhaps slangs that are very foreign to me and my demographic context. Yet I, press on and soldier on in that respect. So if I can do that, then I adopt the same, motivation when I read cases where I do not very easily understand or
You lost him again?
The judges who's went with then it is a substantive aid for me. Yeah, I hope that answers the question, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr.
Am I answering the question?
Yeah.
I said I'm so sorry. I don't know to who. Right. Sorry.
Thank you for answering the question, Mr. Azlan. I would like to read one question. This is from our YouTube channel, because some participants, they cannot join our Zoom meeting, yeah, but they can view us live. So this particular question is from Joel William. How do the lawyers deal with justice as a whole? Is justice meted out fairly this field, or are there discrepancy in the concept of justice relating to individuals' own literature understanding?
Sorry. First of all, am I now heard again very clearly, ma'am?
Yeah. How do the lawyers deal with justice as a whole? Yeah. Is justice meted out fairly this field, or are there discrepancies in the concept of justice relating to individuals' own literature understanding?
I think when we talk about justice, we can never find an absolute answer. Maybe my definition of justice and, would differ from how you would perceive justice, ma'am. It's a very subjective question that needs a very subjective clarification in answer to these questions in our attempt to even approach this question to begin with. Well, again, law and justice are two different things. Law is not justice. Law is, to me, a mechanism through which justice is sought to be achieved. So in any instance where we think that justice does not prevail, then it is a very good time to sit down and reflect on the way that justice is not achieved, i.e., through the workings of the law. So if justice is not achieved through the law that we perceive unfair, then it is our responsibility then to address it. Again, how is it helpful when we read literature? How is it helpful that literature would make us see this? The very fact of me saying this is through my understanding that I've gained from reading many works of literature, to be honest with all of you here. And when responding to this question, the very first thing that came to my mind was Hard Times by Charles Dickens. Yeah, I really strongly recommend the book Hard Times. So when you read Hard Times, it's all about injustice. You see injustice everywhere in Hard Times. Likewise, when you read Emily Bronte, Wuthering Heights, you see Thomas Hardy, Jude the Obscure. There are many, just a wealth of injustices abound. And it makes me think that what we may perceive as Western values to be beneficial and very profitable may not be profitable after all, because of the scenes that I see based on the English values during the Victorian times. So where am I going with this? Many would ask, right? What I mean to say here is, through our reading of literature, through our reading of a story, we see the very beginning of the action, the climax, and then the conclusion of it. Then we see the development of the plot from A to B up until Z, and we see the resolution towards the end. Yeah, and what is it that was resolved to be done by the characters in the novel to address certain issues prevalent within the novel? That is the very same thing that we may apply as lawyers ourselves. We see many, such unceasing prevalence of injustices around us today in this country, for example. Yeah. And what is it that is resolved to be done about it by the power that be, and most importantly, by us who demands that, our roles as human beings, as citizens be taken just as importantly as others from the higher ups. So it makes us think, it makes us see the same exact similarity between what we may just seen as a work of fiction, yeah, and the reality on the ground that we actually feel and appreciate and want to change. So that to me is the way to find relevance, and that is the very thing that helps me see through the world today in an objective, in a comparative yet objective way. Yeah. Oh, I see a question raised. I see a hand raised.
Yes, our Mr. MC, Zach, go ahead if you have any question to us. Mr.
Yes,
Azlan.
I do have one. Okay, Alan, now for this course, right? For this course, the final assessment for this program is basically the students will do some acting. So because as you know, when we talk about literature, we have poetry, short stories, novel, and also drama. So where students will be doing some acting, they have to adapt any component or element from the text To Kill a Mockingbird. And also aside from ELC600, I'm also a drama lecturer. I teach drama for the students. So you see, now I remember, I think this happened about 2 semesters ago. When by the end of the semester, I had the students to fill in, what did they think about the course, about the program, the assessments, etc., etc. Most were nice things lah, but there was this one thing a student put here. I don't see the relevance of having us to do drama and acting. How is that related to law? So I was like, okay. I mean, it was anonymous lah, right? So I had no idea which student. I mean, I think I could pinpoint which one lah again, but but anyway. So because of that, all right. Okay, drama, part of literature, and as we know, some people, and I've met people like this before. They like literature, okay, but they have no passion for drama. Okay, it's like how some people prefers the poetry element of literature and nothing else. But for this course, they have to do drama. They have, I mean, not in depth lah. They don't have to read scripts and so on. Not yet, maybe. Okay, future semester, we don't know again. So, I just want to ask you, I mean, as a literature enthusiast and also as a practicing lawyer, do you have, number one, any suggestions for these students who will be graded for their drama based on their acting? They have to script write and also any insights on those who are resistant or afraid or shy, because that's one of the problems when we are teaching drama. They are afraid to act. Malu. Okay.
I may not have the solid answer for the first question. But I think if I may just combine my answer. If I may just combine these questions so that I can just produce one same answer. I think, there are many people who have come to approach, and there are many people who have actually approached me asking, and there are in fact many people who have helped them in their concern regarding confidence. There are many people who come. There were quite a number of them who came to me last, I think before COVID, and told me that they were not confident enough to speak. And these people at the time were first, second year lawyers. So they want to somehow have a rigorous training with me. They want to, well, it's very interesting. When I ask them, okay, just, what is your concern? And they tell me, I want to speak the way you do, Alan, in court, because I've seen in court, I want to speak the way you do. Okay, first of all, I don't know how I speak because I don't, I generally just argue, and of course we pick up these experiences along the way. I don't wake up one morning and decide that I want to be that figure, whom I really adore by the way he or she speaks. But the very first thing that I do, or that I did last time, was to make him scream. Stand in the middle of the crowd and just scream. First, to attract attention, and then one of them was not quite happy with it. In fact, he was very reluctant at first. And I said, as a lawyer, we don't just speak, we speak to attract attention. Once the attention is attracted, then we convince them with the argument. You may have the strongest argument in your head, but without you being able to attract the attention, then the argument can just go to waste in vain. Yeah. So, and number two, the very reason why I've asked that person to scream is because it's not about them not being able to speak, or not about them being able to speak confidently. In my experience, what I've gathered is most of the time, it's not the question of lacking confidence. It's actually a question of not having a belief in yourself that you can do it. It's wholly different from confidence altogether, because you may have the word in your mind, you may have the idea in your mind, you may have the idea in your mind, you may have the words at the tip of your tongue, you may have, some amount of confidence to stand up. But because of the belief that when you stand up, people will laugh at you, people will scream at you, people will feel that you're not worthy of this, or hey, you're just going to make a fool of yourself if you do this. And that's why they then refrain from doing what they internally would want to do. Yet they internally form the idea that they do not want to do that because of that internalization of belief that you cannot do it. Yeah, not very much a question of confidence, in my opinion. So acting, as much as you hate it, as much as you think it is of no use to you, yeah, think of it this way. You are creating a story by way of movement. That's why you act. I'm not a good actor myself. I'm not even an actor to begin with. But the way I see it, think of it as a simulation of realities. Okay, when I say reality, in terms of you law students, in terms of you all as young lawyers, the realities of you, or the reality that you will face one day when you stand up before the bench in an actual court. Yeah, if you think that acting is, not of any use because you're only going to make a fool of yourself, just imagine that when you are in court and stand before the bench, you will have the same exact feeling. But the difference is it's a real court, right? It's a real court setting. At that time, if you've done this acting that you may not like it, or you may hate it altogether, but if you've done it, years later, you go to court and stand before the bench and start acting, or start, being in action still. You'll be in action before the bench. Having done that acting before Zachariah, trust me, nothing in court will daunt you or threaten you anymore. Trust me. Because You may think that you may have made a fool of yourself for having done what you really hate and resent and dread doing, right? And you may have the choice of saying, I don't like this. What's the point of this? I don't want to do this anymore. Oh, thank God it's over. I don't have to do this anymore next year, right? But when you go to court, you have no choice. If you decide to be a lawyer, if you decide to be a litigation lawyer one day, that's probably what you have to do all, along forever. So I'm going to Segamat. I'm going to sacrifice my Sunday because I have a trial in Segamat starting Sunday until Wednesday. I'll be the lead counsel in that trial. And that means me having to stand up from 9 to 5. Hopefully, ends quite earlier than that on a daily basis. But that's generally me having to stand up before the bench, asking questions or arguing on certain points of law from 9 until 5, tentatively from Sunday until Wednesday. Do I like it? Well, I'm not in the position to say that I hate it, but I must do it. Will I feel embarrassed for doing something that, may look rather shameful to me as a lawyer? I don't know. We'll see on Sunday. I may make mistakes. I may stutter. I may ask questions that I shouldn't. But no matter what happens this coming Sunday until Wednesday, no matter how embarrassing the prospective experience may appear to look for me, will I be discouraged? Will I go back to KL feeling that or thinking that or being confident or believing that I'm not a good lawyer? I don't think I will do that because I've practiced before how to overcome this emotion. So take acting as a form of training, as a form of simulating the reality that you shall face when you go to court and stand before the bench one day. If you think that this is something that you hate doing because, well, how is it relevant to me? I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm a law student, not a performing art student. Why is it that I'm being tasked with this assignment? Think of it, first of all, well, you have no choice. Otherwise, you won't be graded favorably because that's the requirement of the university. But that aside, think of it as a form of training. Think of it as a form of the art of making yourself look stupid or look embarrassing without believing that you are embarrassing or without believing that you are stupid. Yeah, do that. And trust me, you may think that, oh, what is Azlan talking about? I'm supposed to be in bed now. Why am I having to sit through the session until 5 o'clock? But trust me, please, please, please. If this does not work for you when you are in practice years on, please come and tell me. I would love to hear that so that I will, find other ways. Because I've done that. I mean, not that I've done acting, but I've done that. I've when I said that I've had students coming or junior lawyers coming to seek my help. I asked them to scream just to get attention, just to get the confidence, but most of all, just to restore the belief that despite you looking stupid in the eyes of others who see you, that you are not actually stupid. So the art of doing something that may seem like a foolish thing to do without actually believing that you are, as a matter of fact, a fool. Yeah, so that's a form of training. Trust me, people would come to me and they pay me thousands upon thousands for that personal session. And I think Mr. Zachariah does not even charge you a cent of it. All you need to do is just to attend the class and just, pay the tuition fees that you pay to the university anyway. So make full use of that. I hope I'm not speaking too long.
Mr. Azlan, if I may add, okay?
Yeah.
You didn't have to scream in our session today, but instead, but you do keep us our attention, you grab our attention with your body language, your hand gestures and all that is, you know, another one of the forms of performance, yeah, Zach, in drama.
Yes,
interesting.
exactly. And also, it's not just to entertain. I agree with Mr. Allen today that drama, when we're talking about confidence.
Yeah.
All right, like I noticed when I meet people, okay, if I may share for a short while, is that okay, Madam Moderator?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. Now, if I may share, sometimes when I meet people, right, people often think that, okay, I'm this guy that's so confident, put him on the stage, I can do anything. Little did people know, before I entered UiTM, okay, I was from an all-boys school, and I would be the last person to raise my hand to ask a question in class. I was afraid to talk in front of an audience. And I remember back in Form 4, was it Form 5? Remember back in Perimpunan, we had to go and baca doa. When I was selected, I still remember what my ustad told me. He looked at me and he said, ni hang pasal apa masa duk baca doa tu, apa lutut hang duk bergetak macam mesin Ogawa tu. So yeah, I remember that. But I gotta say, it was thanks to acting, to be honest. I know how to, I mean, I don't know about lawyers or about you yourself, Mr. Allen, but do I still get nervous every single time when I need to talk in front of an audience? And this is coming from someone where technically my job is to speak in front of an audience. And also I do lots of hosting and so on. I still feel nervous. Okay, I apologize for that. Rumah tepi jalan besar biasalah kan. Okay, so I still feel nervous. I do. Okay, my heart will still go every single time. Yeah. But thanks to acting, I remember what my mentor taught back in the day, how to mask it, how to hide the. He said that you can be nervous, don't show that you are nervous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everything is in here, yeah. Just like what Mr. Allen said just now.
Exactly.
What you believe, yeah.
Exactly. All right. Okay, and I think back to you, Madam Moderator. Thank you so much, Mr. Allen, on your insights. Really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Okay, we do have the question from YouTube. Hold on, let me read the question. Yeah, Mr. Azlan.
Yeah.
You still okay?
Yeah. I'm very good. I'm very good. Don't worry about it.
Thank you so much. Okay, so since law needs literature, what do you think regarding fictional works about the law by those who do not work in the law field? Can it actually help us to understand the law accurately?
You mean if you choose to read a piece of literature that is...
Just like, for example, To Kill a Mockingbird, right? For those who are not in literature field, like I myself, who is in language, will I be able to, will it help me to understand the law accurately?
Oh, absolutely. Well, To Kill a Mockingbird is not a novel riddled with heavy technical terms or jargons that one would only see in court or when one reads legal documents or legal text. No. It's just a very simple story with deep meanings. Yeah. So it's about, if I may share, there's this gentleman by the name of Atticus with a tomboyish daughter and a black mate at home, and they live in a very culturally diverse sort of setting at home, and but in a very heavy discrimination or rather racial prejudice laden society. And Atticus, being a white man, happens to defend a black person accused of rape, and he was convicted, and he tried to escape prison and was shot to death. So it's just as any other stories that you will be able to read very comfortably, very conveniently, without worrying over the possibility of not understanding certain legal technicalities, because there is no legal technicality in To Kill a Mockingbird. For example, when I read something, I am a firm believer of Harold Bloom's very famous remark, the art for the sake of art. Well, he does not say that per se, but he embraces that value. You embrace the art for the sake of art. So when you read a book, when I read Shirley, I have no expectation of what it is. All that I know that it was the fact that I would have to finish up until what, 771 pages. So yeah, it's a very thick, fat book. Yeah. But all that I know, all that I knew at the time of me picking up the book was this book was quite challenging in terms of the number of pages. That's it. I paid no attention. In fact, I refused to read the synopsis of the book because I do not want to have that expectation. I do not want to have any prior knowledge at the back of my mind that that would guard me against wanting to understand the story more. So when you read something, you may have the idea that it is something related to law, but read the book, try to understand the word, try to pick up the theme the way you're most comfortable picking up theme or reading it or understanding it. Because you may feel that, oh, I may not understand it in a way that Azlan does, but that's the very point of reading. That's the very point of critiquing. You may have 1,000 different opinions and interpretations of a book that are wholly different from how I view and choose to perceive it. It's a question of construct, something that's, perceived and conceived and solidified in our head, which can be different from the way you do it. So if in response to the question you've asked, that very person on YouTube, if you think that you may, fret or concern yourself with the possibility of not understanding a certain concept, don't be, because I've never seen any book of literature, any work of classic literature, for example, that really burden us with the task of or with the expectation of certain niche area of knowledge. You will, it's 2022. If you do not, or if you happen to chance, or if you happen to come across any things that are quite beyond your area or your understanding, there's always a thing called Google, and there's always, that thing that you can go to, to help you understand it more. There is no shame in Googling certain words. There is no shame in consulting your dictionary in search for any words that you don't understand. And there is no shame whatsoever in, just doing anything that help you, that would help you understand or broaden your understanding further. If someone tells you, oh, what's a shame? What is it that you're doing? Who does that? Trust me, the shame is upon them. But the lesson, the profit, the proceeds of your labor will always be yours.
Thank you so much for that insightful response. Yes, I do agree with you. We have our, Mr. Google. If we do not understand anything, we can just Google up. 2020, just like you said.
Yeah, true.
Okay. So aside from English and literature, Mr. Azlan, sorry. Do you have any last words for law students, our future lawyers?
Well, I think literature or not literature, as a lawyer, as future lawyers, or just as someone who wants to be more successful every day, just do not stop reading. That is my advice. You may read any genre of your desire, of your choice, of your interest. It's all up to you. The point is, do not stop reading. It's not about reading per se. It's about that discipline that you form when you pick up a book and read and not leave the book until you finish it. It's not about the story. Well, of course, it's only part of it. But I think the most important attitude that you may form out of reading is the act of starting something and only feeling happy when you've finished with it, not when you give up and move on to other things. In other words, jangan buat separuh-separuh. So to inculcate that attitude, it's always good to start with taking a book, promising yourself that you will finish it, and no matter how much you think you hate the book, you will try anyway to the best of your ability to finish reading it and move on to other things. And after all, hey, lawyers, how dare you call yourself lawyers, or how dare you call yourself a student of law if reading is something that you are against doing? It's like being a teacher of a, of a school full of kids, and yet you hate kids. So don't do that. Don't do that. You do not want to be a lawyer because you think that being a lawyer is a glamorous profession. It is not, first of all. It is a huge responsibility that you must discharge to the best of your ability. And how to glean that ability in the context of being a lawyer, I would say nothing works better than the very, very habit of reading. That would be all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Azlan. Okay, one last question, yeah, from YouTube.
Oh yes, go on, ma'am.
Okay, from YouTube channel, Mr. Azlan, as a lawyer, how do you balance between reading something not related to law, i.e. novel for leisure, and reading law texts?
Well, I don't make any distinctions between the seriousness of reading, the types of, the type of materials required of me to read when it comes to work, and those required of me when it comes to reading other things non-related. I perceive reading as the act that I must continuously do all the time. So you will just find sometimes, when I'm at work, I'll just do the work. And of course, I have a great helping hands from my other assistants when it comes to work. But individual reading is a must as well. So that's law reading. But of course, literature reading that I'm always keen on doing. It's something that I do all the time. So speaking of the balance on which I strike between reading these two, for me to ensure that you have a balanced treatment on both, you have to treat both as of equal importance. So no one is above the other. So both are just equally important. Yeah. And I read, and I make it a habit to read when I wake up. So I try to wake up very early in the morning. Sometimes, 9 o'clock, and the case starts at 9 o'clock. So when I reach court at perhaps 9:15, so I'll try to maybe finish 2-3 pages, and lunchtime when you read, then you can eat and read at the same time. And just before I sleep, to ensure that I have a very good sleep, then you may just flip through 3 or 4 pages. Yeah, and you have the whole Saturday and Sunday to not want to waste your time on anything else, since we're all old enough to think that doing all this wasteful stuff just not, or shouldn't be our point of motivation anymore. And then we can always go for reading. Yeah. So to ensure that we have the balanced, I repeat, to ensure that we have the balanced treatment on both law and non-law text or books or reading materials, it's very important that we treat both of equal importance. No one is above the other.
All right, very well. Thank you, Mr. Azlan. Right,
You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much. We do appreciate your wisdom and insight, about language, literature, and law. Your perspective was very interesting. I would say the word awesome and unexpected. Your wisdom and experience, I reckoned, aided the students in understanding, in understanding the importance of English and literature in law. Yeah. So if I may summarize, before I pass the floor to our Mr. MC, if I may summarize, out of so many educational points that you have, presented to us today, 3 interesting facts that we learned, about Mr. Azlan today. Okay, first, you were once our LG student. Okay. Yes. Okay. Second, I believe English is your. You are confident to speak in English much more rather than Malay BM, and that English.
Oh no. I'm not confident to speak English more than I speak Bahasa. I'm just confident to speak any languages that I'm tasked with doing. I treat language or all languages of equal importance.
Equal importance. Yeah. Okay, but we do learn today that English is also used in Malaysian court. Okay.
Yes.
Right. And thirdly, and I must say, most importantly, you are not a good cook, as you mentioned earlier. So yeah, just stick to law and language.
Trying my best.
Yeah. Try your best. Okay. So thank you so much, Mr. Azlan, for your time. Your insightful sharing session with our law students today, and therefore I shall pass the floor to our Mr. MC, Mr. Zach. Go ahead.
All right, thank you so much, Puan Nur Aziati. Okay, so Mr. Alan, thank you so much for this wonderful sharing session with our students.
Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. No problem. So fellow students, I hope that with this session you have better insights on, when we're talking about language and literature, to get their relation with law, the field that you guys are currently in, and being future lawyers, and how these are important, how they technically coexist with one another. And also, most importantly, do read, people, do read. Okay. So before we end the session, I would like to have a virtual photo session right now. So to the students, if you're able to, you may turn on your cameras. Those yang kena ambil tudung ke apa ke, sila ambil. Alright, we're gonna have a quick photo session.
Turn on your camera, Yusaini.
Okay, Puan Aziati calling her students.
Student Tengku Abdullah, we have Putri Bratisha, turn on your camera, guys.
All right, okay. Oh, we have about 4 pages. Okay, 4 pages. Here we go. Okay, so right, I'm not going to do one formal, one freestyle. So it's up to you. Just make sure whatever you post is untuk tontonan umum, sesuai ditonton oleh semua lapisan masyarakat, people. Okay. So yes. Okay. All right. So we got 4 pages. I'm going to go with the first page first. First page first. What's happening to my language? Whatever. Okay. So the first page in 3, 2, 1. Smile. Okay, we got the first one. Perfect. Okay, so now moving on to the second page. In 3, 2, 1. Smile, people. Smile. Smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave. Okay, third page in 1, 2, 3. And lastly, the fourth page. Okay, and 1, 2, and 3. Okay, awesome, amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, so I would like to end this. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for our guest for today, Mr. Azlan Abdul Razak. Thank you so much for our Madam Moderator, Puan Nur Aziati Mat Saad. Thank you for the other lecturers that joined us for today, and of course, not forgetting our ELC600 students here in our Zoom, and also our viewers on YouTube. So to the students, I believe Puan Aziati has shared the attendance link in the chat box. So please fill that in, okay, for your own attendance. And we hope that, who knows, maybe this series, in a way, maybe we can continue with next semester. All right, I'll definitely be contacting Mr. Azlan again, inshallah. Okay, so thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May God bless all of you. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye. And
thank you, Mr. Azlan.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Azlan.
Thank you, Mr. Azlan.
Thank you.